Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. Happy fall. We're going to wait just a minute. I see people still filtering into the room. We're up to about 150 and it's continuing to climb. So just give us 1 minute. We'll wait to see how many more show. All right, we're at 180 and climbing, so we'll get going. And thanks to everybody for joining us today. These forums, we've gotten in the habit of doing 3 or 4 such town halls per year, just a way for us to broadcast any important information, but most importantly, to have you ask questions and to have members of the team that have assembled here as panelists to answer those questions or to get more information and circulate that later on to the campus. But thanks for all of the hard work that each of you has put forward as faculty members, as staff members, to get ready for this fall semester. I don't know about you, but the feeling on campus is different this fall than in past falls. Of course, I'm speaking of coming out of the pandemic and the times during the pandemic when life was just suppressed a little bit. And it feels really good to see the activity levels on campus and students roaming about, and that sense of optimism and hope that comes with all of the new students who arrive on our campus. So it's an exciting time for all of us. And thanks, importantly, for all the preparation that you made for your classes, for the work that you do within your work units to make sure that our new students and our returning students had a great transition back to the classroom this fall. I do want to also recognize it's interesting. There's this great metaphor that I've been watching unfold before me. We've had unprecedented numbers of geese on our campus. This is kind of a lighthearted statement, but as we see the nurturing that happens from the parents to the young goslings and the growth that we see, it's pretty amazing. And yesterday, as Kathy and I were out for a walk, I think we saw the final 5 geese. They were honking and making a lot of noise, and all of a sudden they flew off into the distance. And we think that was their first voyage away from here for the season. So there were 2 remained. There was one with a broken wing who has a friend who's looking after him or her, and we'll see what happens. But it was the good news for the campus is, as we see the joy of them departing, we also recognize the opportunity to walk peacefully among our sidewalks without having to watch where we're walking. You know what I mean. Anyhow, let me turn it over with that friendly public service announcement. Let me turn it now over to Melanie Linder. Vice President Linder is our Vice President for Marketing and Communication. She does an awesome job as the moderator for these events, and I know that she's going to take control of the situation, and we'll have a great discussion here over the next hour. Melanie, over to you.
All right, thank you, President Armacost, and thank you for all of you that are online watching us. I'm going to ask that you please submit your questions in the Q&A, and then we'll get to them in the order that it's received. To kick us off this morning, this afternoon, we actually have a few questions that Staff Senate and you Senate had submitted in advance. So we're getting with those questions. Start putting your questions into the Q&A function. So the first question has to do with parking. So I'm going to turn this over to our Associate Vice President for Facilities, Mike Pieper. The first question is from someone from our Northern Prairie Community Clinic. They said their department is in Columbia Hall. Their concern is that they've struggled the past few years since the parking at Columbia Hall switched to A/S parking instead of A only, is that they've lost the last 2 to 3 rows in the south parking lot for Greek parking. And they're wondering what can be done about that, or the reason for the change in that parking status. So Mike, would you be able to answer that for us?
Sure. Just in general, we're always constantly analyzing our parking lots, trying to understand their utilization. As we move departments and programs from building to buildings, we see lot pressures go up and down. And it's a fine balance of trying to keep our lots at a high utilization so that it can kind of keep the cost of our parking system low and affordable. And so we're monitoring those adjustments. We're feeling pressure from the closure of the Memorial Stadium lot. The cars have moved where we thought they would move into Columbia, into the lot behind Christus Rex and into the Chester Fritz Auditorium lot. We're waiting for parking to settle in this first week. We get a lot of citations drafted for those that shouldn't be in the lot and helping them kind of get to the correct lots. We'll be modifying some of the signages in the lot to open up more spaces for those in need. We're also looking at and have reduced some of our pay-as-you-go in some of those high-demand lots, again, to provide more spaces to those that are permitted. In addition, we have hired a firm, Kimley Horn, one of the largest consultants in the United States with a large higher ed presence. They'll be on campus this fall, gathering a lot of information and data, working with the parking committee, reaching out to our customers via surveys and other tools to gather information so that we can modify our system in a positive way moving forward. And we are investigating expansion of certain lots, the Christus lot behind Christus Rex, expanding some parking over by Burtness and Gamble, expanding some parking over by the Starcher, Columbia Overpass. And so we'll keep those things moving along so that we can improve the parking for all moving forward.
Thanks, Mike. Our next question is for VP John Mihelich. Can you give us an update? Actually, VP Mihelich, but also President Armacost. Maybe we'll start with President Armacost. And that is, can you give us an update on how the search for our new VP for research is going?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I'll actually, I think our chair of the search committee, Provost Eric Link, is probably a suitable next speaker after I speak. The process is going well. August 22nd was the deadline for applications. I know the committee met this morning to discuss the batch that has come in, and so I know it was we've had a very strong turnout in terms of those who have submitted names. I'm eager to see the direction that it heads. I get involved when the finalists have been named, and I look forward to the recommendations that the committee gives to me. Eric, over to you.
Thank you, President Armacost, and thanks for the question. Indeed, we had a very productive meeting this morning. Just to back up a little bit, the search was launched at the beginning of the summer. The search firm was very successful in putting together a solid pool of candidates. The committee's been reviewing those candidates and is currently in the process of determining who shall be invited for first round interviews. So we are expecting initial rounds of interviews to be conducted in mid-September, and then we're anticipating finalists being on campus towards the end of October. But so far, so good.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Next question is for our Associate Vice President, Peggy Varberg for Human Resources, and that's around the pay equity study that's going on. The specific question is, is the university willing to consider contributing to grant-funded programs in an effort to contribute to the pay equity efforts going on across campus? Many of these programs are unable to keep up with UND's pay equity schedule because of their funding models. However, some contributions to grants from the university would be helpful for these pay equity gaps. Peggy?
Thank you, Melanie. We are in the middle and in the thick of things with our pay equity. We are probably 3 or so weeks in working with Huron. And so we expect that the work that they're doing will be done and completed by the end of November. So we have a few weeks left or several weeks left and a lot of work to do, but they're doing a great job for us. We have a really great team. They understand higher ed and all the facets of it. They're super easy to work with. And so we're really excited about the process. On the outside of that, what will happen on the end of that is they will put together help us to put together a plan to solve any gaps that we find on any of the themes that we're looking at. So remember that we're looking at market penetration. So where are you in your market? On the staff side, do we have the right markets? And then market penetration for faculty, are they where they should be? For rank, for time in rank, discipline, those kinds of things. But then also those things related to gender and race and veteran status and disability, those kinds of things as well as far as true equity. At the point of conclusion, we'll have what we think it will take in terms of a number frankly, to solve some of the issues that we find. And so we will work with finance and with the president and EC to develop a plan as to how we manage that. It may be 2, 3, or 4 or 5-year plan, depending on what it is, what we find, and how we have to manage, what that dollar number looks like. But yes, there are conversations about strategic investment. It's important that we take care of all of our people, all of our positions, those kinds of things. So those conversations are happening with regard to all the different funding streams that come in to help us operate compensation for our positions. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Peggy. The next question is going to go to Odella. Odella, can you give us an update on the MIRA budget model and the decisions following the review that took place last year?
Absolutely. Thank you, VP Linder. The model review began in February, and it was completed mid-April. The staff that was involved in that, we had to kind of turn our attention to the legislative session and completing the FY 24-25 biennial budget. It also allowed the implementation process for the new UND LEAD strategic plan to take shape. And it's critical, of course, that our model stays in alignment with the strategic plan. There were 18 opportunities that were identified during the model review, and they categorized them into 3 sections. The first section being more informational or educational gaps and improvements, and then that third section being innovative adjustments for UND to consider. With the biennial budget now done and the strategic implementation team now in place, resource planning and allocation has been meeting with Provost Link and VP Stewart to review the opportunities and develop next steps. Our thought is work will begin in September, and we had 74 stakeholders, including students, faculty, staff, and administrators that were interviewed as part of the model review. And our plan is to continue opportunities for stakeholder engagement and feedback as we work through the next steps.
Thank you so much. Next question, I'm going to start with President Armacost. And President Armacost, I believe you may invite others to answer as well. But kicking it off, the note was, President Armacost, thank you for your letter in the Grand Forks Herald on UND strengthening its connection to the community. You mentioned that UND Leads helps create a sense of worth for all members of the community. In light of the bills targeting our LGBTQ+ colleagues, and especially our transgender community members that passed the legislature this past spring, could you please provide an update about how that legislation will impact our university community and what UND is doing to help foster an environment in our community and the state that reinforces a sense of worth for all members of our campus?
Great, thank you for the great question. I think you've hit on the most important philosophy in asking the question, and that is reinforcing the worth and the value and the humanity of everybody on the campus. And I pledge to continue to do that from my position, and the senior leadership and leadership all throughout the institution will honor the dignity of each and every human being on our campus. The legislation undoubtedly has, for those, for example, who are considering coming to Grand Forks to join us on the campus, when people read headlines, of course, they'll make judgments about that sense of worth and whether the campus is fully committed. But we're going to continue to make sure that everybody, students, faculty, and staff, feel a place, and to make sure that they feel that welcoming spirit on our campus. One great example of that, and I'll have Tambaqui Bailey come on in just one second, is we're hosting an LGBTQ+ Institute this fall, which is intended, Jeff Maliski, who is the director of our Pride Center, is organizing this event and doing a great job in terms of pulling people not just from across the state, but from across the region to talk about how campuses can respond effectively to the challenges faced by the LGBTQ+ community. Tambaqui, are you on?
President Armacost, I'm here. Thank you so much. And thank you, VP Linder, for this question, and to the member of the town hall who posed this question. Just to echo what President Armacost said, that there were multiple bills that were passed that have impacted our LGBTQ plus community. And we continue to strive towards how do we support and make sure that all of our members of our LGBTQ plus community feel welcome, supported, and we are working to create a sense of belonging. As President Armacost mentioned, on October 10th of this year, we will have a one-day-long institute, which is entitled Queer Resilience, Breaking Boundaries, LGBTQ plus Higher Education. And so we have this institute where we will have keynote speakers as well as individuals presenting research and other work that they're doing as it relates to LGBTQ plus issues in higher education. Also, the president mentioned Dr. Jeff Molesky, who is the director of a Pride Center. Through the Pride Center, we have multiple initiatives as we continue to work with students, faculty, and staff who identify as part of our LGBTQ plus community. And so one of the efforts that we have going is that we have our LGBTQ plus mentorship program, where we connect our LGBTQ plus faculty and staff with students on campus. And we also have a gender expression closet, so that individuals who may identify as transgender, non-binary may be able to find clothing that fits their gender expression. Also, we have resources available as it relates to individuals who are part of our transgender community, and also really great guideline in terms of effectively working with our LGBTQ plus community. So I do think that there are a lot of efforts that we're doing as it relates to our LGBTQ plus community, as well as other communities who have often found themselves experiencing barriers in higher education for various reasons. And so we continue to work with the communities, and we continue to look for avenues where we connect and can really do good, positive work.
Thanks, Ambakwe. And there was a follow-up question about whether faculty are invited to the LGBTQ plus institute that's happening this fall.
Yes, if I'm not explaining it well enough, I apologize. It is a conference that is open to everyone, to students, to faculty, and staff. Please go to the Pride Center. You can actually register for the conference right now. Registration is open. And you can also, if you are so inclined, you may submit a proposal for presentation as well. And so this is a regional one-day institute. And so we're looking to we've already had over, I think, 100 and plus people who've already registered from North Dakota, Minnesota, South Dakota. So it's a regional conference, and we're really excited about it.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey. All right, our next question, I'm going to kick it over to President Armacost once again, but I'm sure he may invite others to respond as well. President Armacost, how is UND supporting and including its remote employees and students? Virtual town halls are appreciated, but many other events seem to be geared only towards our on-campus audience or planned with a remote audience as a second thought. Yeah, so remote work is present, and being a remote student is something that's increasingly common at UND. And I'll give huge shout out to the EERC, the Energy and Environmental Research Center, which hosts each year. They started this last year, what they call the EERC Connect, Summer Connect program, where they bring the entire both remote and in-person staff together for essentially a week-long event to build relationships and to talk about kind of the mission and vision of their organization. So it's a great chance to build those relationships. And it's really precipitated by the need to bring our remote employees kind of into the main and feel connected with the organization. On the student side, we have a growing population. It's, I don't know, 25% of our population, maybe even more, is now online. And so we have to make sure every effort is taken to include
our online students in activities that happen on campus. And in fact, many of our philanthropic groups actually have outreach to online students, and they make themselves available for online activities. And certainly the advising and the support staff that we have available on the academic side is tremendous in terms of supporting those online students. So it's a growing area of opportunity for us to make sure that we bring online students and remote workers into the main of the university. I'm trying to think who else. Art Malloy, Vice President Malloy, might have some additional thoughts about student activities, and certainly Provost Link. Eric, you might have some additional thoughts about how we're bringing faculty and staff, at least on the academic side, closer together.
Well, President Armacost, I'm certainly here, and I'd first like to say that all of our services are available to all of our students, regardless of whether they are on campus or whether they're online learners. So our services are already available to all students, and some of our services are available 24 hours. As far as I think, as I would agree with you that probably the area where we need to continue to put focus is trying to make sure that our programming, our activities are activities that can also be accessed by our online learners, and that's something that we're certainly working on. Certainly there will be much more to come on that as we spend a lot of time talking about the UND student experience, trying to make sure that the experience is going to be comparable whether or not our students are online or whether or not they're face-to-face.
And many of our events on campus, many of them are actually broadcast, not broadcast in person, but held in person, but also broadcast, whether it's a live stream through Facebook or through Zoom or some other means, whether it's the annual Martin Luther King Day event or the Writers' Conference. We try to bring all of the events on campus as much as possible to our remote community. So it's a nice opportunity. I don't know, I didn't see our provost jump up, but I think, Eric, I don't know if you had additional comments. Good to see you.
Yeah, actually, just one in a sense, which is a request for information. We're constantly trying to refine our business practices, our operational procedures, and we're deeply invested in making sure that our students, our staff, our faculty are fully able to engage with the university in as many ways as possible. So to the author of the question or to anyone else in the listening audience, if there are ideas, suggestions, if there are certain events or certain activities where we could take a look at them and make improvements in how we make them available to a remote audience, please reach out to my office and we will take a look at it. So we're looking for constantly ideas that will help us improve the way the university community gets to engage with the work of the university.
All right, thank you to you all. Our next question goes back to parking. So I'm going to turn this over to our Associate Vice President, Mike Pieper, once again. Mike, speaking of parking, the parking lot behind Education and McConnell are all for service crew and handicap permits. Most of the time, these spots were empty. There was no single spot for faculty and staff, even temporarily, to load or unload in these areas. Can you answer a little bit about that?
Sure. The lot behind O'Callaghan, or in the kind of engineering quad, as some may say, that some parking was put back in there to provide better accessible parking. A number of the buildings that access that quad have accessible entries off of that quad. It was put in place as a way to move traffic kind of out of the campus quad off of the Centennial. And so the lot itself is a little bit restricted when it comes between the two buildings and intersects with Cornell. And so we're trying to keep the traffic flow back there to traffic that is anticipated to park there versus the kind of the hunting aspect of parking, which our current system is based on. So it is heavily accessible parking. There's some reserved parking back there, and there's some service parking back there. If anybody has need, a department or college, to set aside some spaces for college needs, we certainly can reserve those spaces. I would say just reach out to parking services, and we'll reach out to whoever needs to be brought into that conversation to make that work.
All right, thank you so much. The next question, I'm going to turn back over to Associate Vice President Peggy Varberg again. And the question was, how are the pay equity gaps going to be funded?
That's a good question. And as we mentioned earlier, that's it's still a question. I mean, it's their strategic money, potentially the departments will have some money, but we haven't figured that out yet because we don't really know what it looks like yet. But there is a commitment by leadership at UND to have fully looked at this question, and therefore those thoughts live in the forefront of our minds as well in terms of how do we address it from a budgetary perspective and provide a way to bridge those gaps.
All right, thank you very much. The next question talks about our winter weather. And so while I just shudder even thinking about winter right about now when it's so sunny outside, I'm going to turn this question over to Chief Clark. Chief, during the winter events, I noticed that there were a lot of inconsistencies the last school year between the status of UND and the Grand Forks Public Schools. Several times Grand Forks Public Schools closed or delayed opening 2 hours, while UND did not modify operations at all or only delayed the opening while the schools were closed completely. I thought the overall approach was to match our status with the Grand Forks Public Schools. Is that still the approach this year? Now, Chief Clark, I realize there's lots of people that are involved in those decision makings, but as our point person with the Grand Forks Public Schools, I thought I'd turn it to you first, and then others can chime in as well.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Melanie. And I appreciate the question, everyone. To answer the last part of the question first, that is a large part of the approach. And since during the past 2 years, definitely since I've been in this office, we've incorporated a lot more people into the decision-making process to include the Grand Forks Public Schools, to include city officials, and to include county officials. And while the decision for Grand Forks Public Schools, it is still the strategy to be in unison most of the time. Two of the most dangerous words are always and never, right? So you're going to reserve some judgment sometimes for making your own decision as a university. And we have done that a couple times, and vice versa. The school district has made their own decision to be an independent entity as well. But for the most part, we try and incorporate what the school district is doing into our decision-making process. Like I said, that's not the only factor. That's one of several factors that's considered. These decisions are always complex. Forecasts are quite frankly like incorrect at times. They don't hold up, and that's just the nature of meteorology. It's hard to predict exactly what's going to happen. So just to encapsulate that all, we do try and take that as a very large factor into consideration when making decisions about being open or closed, but it's not the only factor.
Thanks, Chief Clark. Provost Link, I know sitting in those meetings when we're talking about winter weather, often our course schedule and finals or exams are things that we consider as well. Is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
I don't have a great deal to add to what Chief Clark said, other than we are still, indeed, consistently trying to chart a path forward with the way in which we handle winter weather conditions on this campus, not in terms of the plowing, but in terms of operations and closures and so forth. As Chief Clark mentioned, there is a very large group that includes representatives not only from the school system, but from the city and the county that meet regularly when there are winter weather events in order to try to chart a path forward. And often we are in complete agreement, and once in a while, because of different operational needs, we diverge in our decision-making around closures or delayed openings or so forth. The question that is on many of our minds, and we don't have well, we have current clear policy on the matter, but we don't necessarily have resolution that the matter is completely settled yet. Has to do with whether the integration of remote learning opportunities on campus should translate into a change in our pedagogical stance when it comes to a winter weather closure, right? That should we shift to online learning days when we can't get to campus and so forth. Those are complicated questions, and they require some real thought and deliberation, and we shouldn't act quickly in changing current policy because there are equity issues involved. There are issues of whether students even have access to the right technology to be able to complete their work in a remote environment if there's a winter weather closure. But just know that we are constantly looking at those things. I know that HR is studying those issues. We are in my office. I know Rodney Clark is constantly involved in those questions, as is the president's office and marketing and so forth. So anyway, I'll leave the question there for now. But in North Dakota, this is something we're constantly asking ourselves.
And let me add one additional thought. The primary discussion when we have these meetings with our partners across the city is the safety of everybody on our campus. And so that has been the primary driver for the decisions that we've made. I know that I've been criticized for having too quick a trigger finger to either delay or close. But this is with the uncertainty of weather here in the upper Midwest. Safety still drives the concern. But as the provost just mentioned, we're carefully examining opportunities for switching to remote learning, and how would that look, and is that equitable, and how do we pull off something like that? So thanks to all my teammates for those great answers.
All right, excellent. Thank you all so much for that. Another question that's kind of tied to construction and goes to parking again. So AVP Pieper, this is going to go your way. What are the plans for the area where Squires is currently coming down, and can additional parking be put in on that block?
Currently, the site will be restored back to green space as we work with UND Housing on their long-term and short-term housing plans. It could be utilized for a UND housing or apartment building with parking for tents. We are looking at parking expansion though in that area, potentially in front of the Northern Plains Center is a location that we're analyzing. We're also analyzing the expansion of parking across from Nistler on the south side of University, where Gamble and Johnson and Fulton Smith are. That parking could be expanded once Gamble's raised. So not looking at parking on the Squires block at this time, but we are looking at parking kind of adjacent to that site.
All right, thank you so much. President Armacost, I'm going to send this question to you. Recently, Joe Biden proclaimed that he'll be using executive order to mandate the next vaccine for an upcoming COVID surge in September or October. Governor Burgum responded that he will not enforce any mandates at this time. Will you follow, or will you do a wait and see like he did last time in 2020? As these mandates were found unconstitutional by the Supreme Court of the United States, many fear about how safe these vaccinations are.
I appreciate the question, and certainly the actions that we're currently taking in response to COVID are diminished from the early days of the pandemic. I appreciate everyone taking care to look out for one another. I realize there are some differing perspectives on vaccines. I believe that, well, I hadn't heard that there was a mandate forthcoming from the federal government, from President Biden. If that happens, my guess is it will be quickly challenged in courts of law, just like the last federal guidance was. We do have to remember that as a federally funded organization, we lose some control. That just like last time, there were stipulations that said if we didn't have a vaccine mandate, then we would forego the chance for federal funding. That was quickly challenged in court, so it never was implemented on the campus. So we just right now, I feel like I'm being put on a debate stage. Which side would you pick? We'll wait and see what the what is mandated, if anything, and what the response is from the state or from other states about the legality of such a mandate, and we'll go from there. But we'll keep everybody posted on what happens. But let me encourage everybody. Be safe out there. Take all the precautions, including considering getting vaccinated. Thanks.
All right, President Armacost, this question I'm going to send your way too. With the city of Grand Forks moving towards building a turf and aquatics facility, will UND support this effort with the plans to take down the HISLAP moving forward? What ideas are being put forward for UND to support our community having access to this new community facility?
Aquatics are not just a recreational issue, it's a public health and public safety issue. I'm thrilled that the momentum within the city of Grand Forks is going forward for a new facility like this. There's been some uncertainty about whether it's going to be down at the Choice Fitness Center or up north, or we even toyed with an idea of putting it on campus. I think the city's made a smart choice about building an aquatic center next to a turf facility over near the Alaris Center. This is great. It'll be what we understand a long pool, a 50-meter pool. It will support the needs of the community fully. It would be a nice replacement to the HISLAP pool. So in terms of our campus community using that facility, everyone will be entitled as citizens of Grand Forks to use that facility. We have clubs and teams that might also use that facility, and that would probably come at an expense. So we would have to lease the facility to make that happen. We haven't talked about whether the university will subsidize individual members of our campus for using that facility, but I'm sure kind of that's the essence of the question. Will people have free access to the facility? That remains to be seen, but we're having ongoing conversations with the city of Grand Forks and the Park District.
Excellent. Thank you so much. The next question is going to go to Provost Link. Provost Link, the question is, I understand that the State Board of Higher Ed is conducting a survey of post-tenure review policies. What is the Provost's office doing to educate the State Board of Higher Ed about the current annual review policies and procedures that exist? Why is a post-tenure review policy needed when we already have an existing annual review policy and process?
Thank you so much for the question. It is a timely question because just today, we are, in fact, as an institution, submitting our responses to that State Board of Higher Education survey, which we received just a few days ago. What I can report to everyone listening is that what my office has done in cooperation with the President's office is to make sure that we are supplying lots of information about current practice, current policy, the current work that we are doing. We are educating through this survey the State Board of Higher Education on the state of annual review practices, also our tenure policy review practices on campus. We are also including a great deal of information about various post-tenure review practices as employed by individual departments across campus. Not every department on campus has its own independent post-tenure review process, but some do. And we are making sure the State Board of Higher Education is educated about those practices as well. Where this conversation will lead remains to be seen, but we're certainly happy to supply this information to the State Board of Higher Ed. And I see the President, maybe he wants to add a little bit to this.
I just wanted to reinforce the fact that the provost and I during the legislative session spoke actively about the importance of the principle of academic freedom on our university campus and across the higher ed system within the state of North Dakota. Tenure and the tenure process is instrumental to implementing academic freedom. Thanks.
All right, thank you both so much. The next question is going to go to our Vice President Malloy. Vice President Malloy, can you please explain why the staff and faculty meal plans went up by almost 50% this year?
Yes, Melanie, I can. What I will say is that in my conversations with Orlin Rasasson, who is our director of UND Dining, he shared with me that that the prices had been at about $5 per meal for faculty and staff for about 10 years. So even though there is a cost now that has that looks like it might be right around 50% because it went from $5 to $7.50. That cost was needed to make sure that we were able to meet the rising cost of food, the rising cost of fuel, and also to be able to pay the staff a competitive wage, so that you know, because everyone just received raises. So we do understand that's you know, perhaps a pretty big hit, but again, that price stayed constant for about 10 years. I think we will look to do things so that when there are future increases, we will try to make those incrementally as opposed to one big one. But hopefully everyone understands that the price of food has risen, and of course, you know, when you go to the gas stations, you see that the price of fuel has also risen. So those are the main reasons.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to go back over to our Associate Vice President, Mike Pieper again. This question is regarding the walkway between the swimming pool and the biology building that's been closed off for more than a year. What's going on and when will it be open again?
Sure. With a lot of older pools, they suffer from poor mechanical systems, which creates a high level of moisture collecting up on the roof and along the cold wall of the building. So the south wall of the Hislop pool has had a lot of damage due to moisture over the years, and the exterior brick veneer has started to tip out. And so we had made corrections to both the roof and the wall to stabilize it until the building could be raised, which is currently planned after the fall 2024 semester. The walkway was closed as a secondary precaution so that nobody would be hurt. It would be our intent to keep that walkway closed through the duration of Hislop being up.
All right, thank you so much. This next question, I'm going to start with President Armacost, but President Armacost, you may want others to join in as well. It's regarding the proposed railroad underpass on 42nd Avenue. Is the tentative plan to take away some of the UND golf course, and who will pay for those if UND's property is taken in as part of that project?
Great question. Mike Pieper has all the answers, but just know that the traffic problems that are created by that railroad passage, that interchange, I know impacts the members of our campus. We're certainly eager to have the physical infrastructure modified to allow better flow along 42nd Street from the south of campus into campus, and pretty exciting opportunity. There are undoubtedly impacts because of the current design, impacts on the golf course. And what remains to be seen is when they do the design drawings, what those impacts will actually turn out to be. So over to Mike Pieper for more detail.
Yes, the project is externally funded with federal and state DOT dollars for the most part. They have reached out. We have been engaged with them for the last couple of years as they work through a handful of scenarios. The scenario with the more major impact on the southeast corner of the golf course there at that intersection would be redesigned with a golf course architect. We are looking at what our options are, working with athletics on that also. And once we come to an agreeable redesign solution, they'll build that into their project, and that would be funded as part of the project. In addition, there would be funding for any purchase of land needed to redesign that intersection. So we intend for there to be some redesign, but the project will cover 100% of the cost.
All right, thank you so much. The next question is going to go to Chief Clark. Chief Clark, this writer wrote, I am concerned about the dangers of an active shooter event on campus. We do lots of mandatory training on how to lift boxes, but I personally have no idea what I should do in an active shooter situation. I teach in a building with no security cameras and no secured entrances. Can you respond to that?
Yes, I definitely can. And to whoever asked that question, it's a good question, and I share your concern. In society today, there is a lot of gun violence on universities and other places, so it is a valid concern. As far as what you should do, we here at the university go off of run, hide, fight training. And for new employees, that is, we have made that a mandatory training this year. If you're an existing employees, we can still get you the training that kind of speaks to what you should do. I won't necessarily deliver the training class right here, but as you can see by the name, you have options in a scenario, correct? Run, hide, and fight would be the three options. Active shooter or violent situations are very dynamic. You know, they evolve like rapidly. There's so many variables. So I can't tell you in a forum like this, like what you should do in each individual situation, but do know that we train that at the university as far as run, hide, fight. And if you've not heard that before, you can always send me an email. You can get with me or my staff. We do provide training. We'll come out to the office, the building that you work in. We'll do a security assessment and talk to your people to try and promote a sense of like calmness, because you're usually more calm or you're confident when you know what to do, or you've at least thought about the scenario before. So I really appreciate the question. It's something that I think about a lot as well. And, you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention just yesterday, you know, the events in North Carolina and what happened there with some violence on campus. So it is very real in the times that we live in. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be concerned about it, but you should also think about it and think about what your plan would be. And that's where we're here to help in the Department of Public Safety, is to help put a plan together for your area if you have concerns about that. Do know that we are fully staffed now. It is challenging sometimes to keep a police department fully staffed in the world that we live in currently, with a lot of negative attitudes around police, but we've been able to do a good job here and keep the police department fully staffed. So that's one thing that is to the benefit of the campus community, a fully staffed and trained police department. I mentioned the training. You also mentioned some of the cameras. Do know that I'm in consultation with, you know, our vice president and the president all the time about these matters, and they do take them seriously, as we all do. So we look at that as far as making different systems more robust on campus and dedicating the proper resources to that. But that's all that I would have to say about it, unless any other senior leaders would like to add anything to my statements. And thanks for the question.
All right, thank you so much. The next question I'm going to turn over to Dr. Bailey. Dr. Bailey, are there plans or coordinations for identifying the appropriate facility with the HISLOP coming down to host and support the Wachipi powwow as an important part of our community?
Thank you, VP Linder, for the question, for the individual who wrote the question. I want to first say that we remain committed and supportive of our Indigenous community here on campus. And historically, the powwow has been one of the examples of the commitment and support and what it means to have the presence of our Indigenous community here on campus. And so as it relates to the HISLOP coming down, so historically, the Wachipi powwow, the Wachipi has been in the HISLOP and it is coming down. As it relates to 2024, it is our plan as of now to hold Wachipi in the HISLOP, as HISLOP will not be down at that time. And we have begun those conversations to look for suitable venue spaces beyond 2024. And so those conversations continue to happen. And as soon as we have more information, we'll make sure that we are informing our community of that.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. The next question, I'm going to turn over to one of our co-chairs for our repatriation efforts, Lane Lyons. Lane Lyons, is there any updates that you can provide to the repatriation efforts that are being done at UND?
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate the question. As Melanie said, I'm a co-chair along with Crystal Alberts for the NAGPRA Compliance Committee. I guess one of the first updates that I had that we made the announcement beginning of May is the hiring of Mary Baker as our tribal liaison for NAGPRA Compliance. So she's kind of an in-between person of UND and the tribes and coordinating back and forth, and then also with our federal and state agencies. Throughout the summer, we have continued the work. It's been a lot of work. I will tell you it's complicated work, it's hard work, but we are making progress. We will be having an update to the website, the NAGPRA Compliance website, coming in the next few weeks. So I invite you to go on there. If you do have questions, there is a place where you could submit questions on there, or feel free to reach out to anyone from the NAGPRA Compliance committee or anyone that you may have contacts with. We're open to answering those questions, but the work has continued. We regularly meet with our state and federal partners as well as our tribal partners. So that's continued on, and we're going to continue to do that throughout the process. So I won't give you exact updates as that's confidential information that I cannot share, but we are continuing the work. We remain committed to this. And President Armacost and UND has been great to us. And we do regular updates with our Indigenous community members, that's staff, faculty, students, and alumni. We are working on the schedule for the semester for that. So be on the lookout for that. But again, the work continues. We have a lot of moving parts and everyone's been supportive of this.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Chief Clark, this next question is going to go to you again. What precautions are in place to enhance and promote gun safety on our UND campus?
Yeah, thanks, Melanie. I think the largest thing that we have to promote gun safety on campus is that we do store weapons here at the police department. And probably the biggest group of people that takes advantage of that is, of course, the people that live in residence halls. So we try and discourage, although you're allowed to store a gun in a vehicle, we try and discourage that and try and get the student body to store weapons here that live in residence halls. And I would offer that for staff or faculty as well, if they had any weapons that they wanted to store. That's probably the biggest thing that we promote for gun safety, other than, just having a good police presence on campus, and making sure that if anybody has any concerns. I do get asked from time to time, like, about the policy for carrying on campus. And of course, as you know, that's not allowed in North Dakota to carry in a university-owned building. So we answer a few of those questions like that. But by and large, it's the storage of weapons at the police departments is how we promote gun safety.
Thank you so much. All right, our last question. This is going to go to AVP Pieper again. Are there plans to incorporate EV charging infrastructure into our parking lots?
Yes, we have plans. This was brought up to the parking committee last year. A few of the questions that the committee, had were, what's the current demand and what's the future demand? So that's something that we put towards Kimley Horn in their surveying of our students and employees to get a handle on what that demand is. And then also there was a question, really, how should it be implemented, in the sense of, is it paid for as part of a permitting system, specialty EV? Are they spread out throughout campus and it's pay as needed? And so that's another question that Kimley Horn was asked to bring back to the committee this fall. What is the best practice in higher ed? And they'll be on campus for the first meeting in September, and we'll start to work through some of those. But it is our plan to incorporate more EV on campus.
All right, thank you so much. That was our last question. And so I'm going to turn it over to President Armacost now for a close.
I'll be quick, but let me thank Vice President Linder for the great navigation and kind of controlling all the questions. And Dave Dodds was working behind the scenes as well. Thanks also to all the panelists, but most importantly, thanks to everybody who tuned in. Your questions and thoughts are essential to the future of our university, both in the near term and the long term. Recall that we have the new great UND Leads strategic plan, which focuses on the pillars of learning, equity, affinity, discovery, and service. And as I said during some comments during our State of the University presentation, it takes all of us, each of us are elements, and how we connect with one another is so important to deliver the important mission and vision of the University of North Dakota. Let me speak about connection. Last year, we had kind of the year of, and it was the year of gratitude, the focus on just being appreciative of one another. This year, I hereby declare at this town hall, this is the year of connection. And I will emphasize, and our entire team will emphasize, the importance of connecting with one another as human beings, supporting one another as human beings, but also connecting the various parts of our great university together so that we can operate in greater unity and with a greater focus on achieving that great UND Leads strategic vision. So to all of you, thank you so much for being here today. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon, and we'll see you soon.